US Capitol blanketed by snow and surrounded by heavy security. As Kamala Harris fulfilled the vice presidential duty she'd hoped to avoid.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
The outgoing VP certifying the victory of the man who beat her at November's election. USA! 4 years to the day since his supporters stormed the same building as Joe Biden's win was about to be confirmed. Donald Trump was charged with trying to overturn the 2020 results, but the federal criminal case against him was dismissed in the wake of his decisive 2024 victory.
Donald Trump has had the most amazing political comeback in American history. There's really nothing to compare to where he was 4 years ago and where he is right now.
The president-elect has moved quickly to assemble his proposed cabinet, including former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, who's been put forward as Defence Secretary, vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's been asked to run the Department of Health and Human Services, and Tulsi Gabbard, a veteran and former Democrat, tapped to become the Director of National Intelligence.
Well, the big difference for the second term of Donald Trump comes from the fact that his transition is very different. Donald Trump was surrounded by long-term Republicans who had sort of a respect for the separation of powers and for the norms of governance, which of course Donald Trump doesn't. They kept telling him no when he wanted to be told yes. This time around, he has made the decisions based upon loyalty, based upon a willingness to defend the president and all the things he says, and to look good on TV doing it.
But the highest profile personality in Donald Trump's orbit will sit outside the cabinet. Tesla's CEO Elon Musk has already been appointed to co-chair a new advisory body aimed at cutting government spending. Recently, Musk picked a fight with anti-immigration hardliners within Donald Trump's so-called MAGA movement by publicly supporting a foreign worker visa program. The president-elect sided with the billionaire in the dispute, prompting Democrats to mockingly start using the nickname President Musk.
The new one is, President Trump has ceded the presidency to Elon Musk. No, that's not happening.
It seems to me that the Donald Trump Elon Musk bromance is not destined to be a long-term commitment on either side. I think both of these men want to be the center of attention. They want to be the top dog in the room, and there isn't room for two of them at the top.
When it comes to working with Congress, Donald Trump has the advantage of a Republican-controlled House of Representatives and Senate. But the party's margins in both chambers are narrow, and he's not guaranteed an easy ride as he seeks to implement his second-term agenda.
Those margins are extremely close in the House. Any one or two members can derail things for the Republicans. So it's not like the Democrats are dead or on life support. They still have a tremendous amount of power, especially in the Senate. It's going to be very difficult and very delicate for Donald Trump, who is not known for his delicacy, in terms of trying to get some legislation passed.
Donald Trump's top priorities are expected to include a series of election commitments, such as the mass deportation of undocumented immigrants, trillions of dollars in tax cuts, and new tariffs on foreign imports.
I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich.
Australia managed to avoid being hit with steel and aluminium tariffs during Donald Trump's first term. And in a phone call shortly after his election win, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, says he reminded the president-elect of the United States trade surplus with Australia.
Australia is fortunate. They do not seem to be a target of Donald Trump's wrath. or his inconsistent policymaking. In part, I think, because the U.S.-Australia trade relationship is relatively small, and Australia, quite fortunately for their own interests in the age of Trump, is part of a major military agreement between Australia, the UK, and the US that involves significant purchase of American military equipment.
That deal for Australia to buy at least 3 nuclear-powered submarines from the US under the AUKUS partnership was struck by Joe Biden, and Donald Trump hasn't publicly stated his position.
I think the concern that might get raised here in the U.S. government is going to be about whether those submarines are going to be, is that a good deal to send U.S. submarines that are out of a relatively small pool over to Australia and basically lose them as an element of U.S. submarine inventory. I don't know that the president's going to be as concerned about that as people on Capitol Hill will be. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out and if the president and the administration are able to keep the Republicans together, basically on the question of selling submarines to Australia, having them leave the U.S. Inventory.
One of a series of challenges ahead for the president-elect once he's sworn in for his second and final term in a fortnight.
The clock is ticking for Donald Trump. Incumbent presidents usually lose members of the House and Senate in the very first midterm election. It looks like Donald Trump doesn't have 4 years to establish a legacy. He probably only has 2 years, at least a legislative legacy. He can do things in foreign policy and he can do things with executive orders, but those, as we have seen, are short term and can be very quickly undone by his successor.